What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. All right, so today we're going to go over one of the new iconics we got with the St. Patrick's event, and that is the Exobyte Steel. Okay, and I know a lot of people are covering this. You know, the biggest thing about Exobyte Steel, it does have multiple effects going to it, like Exobyte Spike. We have the Exobyte Explosion, and then the Surge. The thing about it is, and I want to really, say, if you have the slot, it's worth the spot. But if you really don't have the slot, it's not. It really is a make and break. It's not a make and break, um, you know, type ability. Sure, I mean, we're going to state the fact that when you get Exobyte Surge, you're going to get these buffs, right? The problem of it is the duration in which you're getting it and the cooldown associated with Exobyte Steel. Because you do have to activate it to get the surge. It's just that simple. And slotting, every time you effectively utilize a status effect, it applies those stacks. So the more status effects you get, the more the buff is going to be. So for example, on this, it specifically says when you utilize electric, terrified, crushed, or destabilize, you're getting these stacks, right? And the stacks are associated, right? You get 12, 24, and a 36 on might, 6, 12, and 18 on precision, so on and so forth. So there is quite, just with Vitalization Restoration 54, but for a might stack, for 36, you just need to apply 3 effects, and that's easily accommodating with other iconics. So when I take a look, if I look at Magma Vortex, for example, it's going to apply Crushed, right? That's very simple. If I'm going to use Scarecrow's Fear Bomb, I'm going to get Terrified. Okay, so there's 2. Now, if I'm in finishing phase, and I use Word of Power, I'm going to get Electric. So there's 3, and especially during finishing phase, that stack is going to boost. But the problem of it is, to implement all of these effects, you have to try to get them to set up. So I'm just going to do a demonstration, for example, with no Starfire buff, show you how the modifiers, adjust. So if I, for example, looking at my current might, I'm at 29. Okay, let's say I go ahead, I just throw a Fear Bomb, and then I activate Exobyte Steel, and then I go back in, and now I'm at 32. Okay, so I went from 29 to 32. All right, pretty simplistic. Now, if I go ahead and add the Crush, which I'll do next, and the Terrified, I'm going to even get more. Just wait. Now, see, this is the problem. It falls off, and you're still waiting on cooldown. So that's why I said, if you have the slot, it's worth the spot. If you do not have the slot, it's really not a make or break, because the duration is just so long. But during finishing phase, it really impacts your finishers, especially when you get all 3 and you proc Word of Power. So for example, now if I go ahead, and then I come in here, now we're at 35. Now 34. Okay. Now, it even gets more crazy when you add even more modifiers. So if we use Purified Pages of the Black or Starfire or so on and so forth, we will even get bigger jumps in our might boost, thus dealing more damage. So, for example, if I hit with my 25, 35 on a crit. Okay, so you guys will see that. Now, if I go ahead and now I'm hitting over 59. So the damage is significant, right? It really is, but it's for a short duration in comparison to the cooldown. Now, let me build this up really quick. Then I'll start showing you guys stacks. Okay, we're still on. Alright, so we got Starfire up. I'm gonna make sure let's get Word of Power up. I want to keep that double stack up. Alright, so now we got Word of Power. Come on. So we're at 35. I probably should have hit it. I'll probably be around 36, 37. So, yeah, I mean, there's a significant amount of boost for activation. The problem of it is you have it's a delay in the activation, 2 seconds to activate it. Any effects will go ahead and apply, set them out. And I noticed one person was like, well, if you do the slot, you would get the buff. And I'm like, no, you have to activate. Unfortunately, that's one of the major problems I'm noticing. So, for example, if I'm certainly at 29, if I don't activate, right, I don't get the bonus. And let's say I go ahead and I use the abilities. I'm still not getting the bonus. I have to activate it to get those bonuses. Okay? So, once again, it is a nice iconic, especially during finishing phase. You're really going to boost that damage when you hit like your Word of Power and you get all these stack effects. But if you don't have iconics and you don't have accessibility to all of those effects, those status effects, then it really isn't a make or break. In hindsight, the power set that actually utilizes the the Exobyte Steel the best is Gadgets. Gadgets has a ton of different status effects that lend to Exobyte Steel, and it really does pay off if you are a Gadgets player to slot the Exobyte Steel. But if you're not, it's neither here nor there. It's just like, do I really want to go ahead and, slot it for, some little boost for a short duration? Because like I said, the cooldown on Exobyte Steel's ability to put in the buff is lengthy. And so you can't keep in a 100% uptime. And without that, it's kind of like, yeah, you'll get the boost, but at the same time, It's debatable. Now, another thing, somebody had asked me, what's the setup for my Rage um, setup? So I do things different. As you guys can see, I'm not using a supercharged generator in this build at all. I just opted not to. I wanted to be ranged with this build. And with the new, but I don't have my augments leveled up. And I could use the Starbolt for sure, but it's very power hungry. So I just decided to opt to do without it with this build. And I went with Starfire. I went with the Flash. Currently, I have Batman. I could use Shazam. This is actually a really good one too because it does have the Electrify, but once again, you're on cooldown. So when you're on cooldown, it's questionable. If you want to utilize Shazam to get that extra status effect. So yeah, it's questionable. But so my setup on my mods, this is a lobby, so I'm using replenishing adapter. I usually would go blast, but I just want, a little extra power between, getting between mobs. So I'll give it a quick blast, get a little extra power return. I'm going with the supercharge word of power, obviously, so I get 5% supercharge back when I use word of power. Now on my neck, I have the extended, accelerating might. The back, we have the plasma wreck chest. Instead of going with core, which I typically do with DPS, since I'm not using a supercharged generator, I actually want to generate more supercharge per ability. So I'm using the supercharge boost versus core. Legs, plasma wreck, because, whatever. Hands, max damage, and, feet. I haven't put feet on. Tumbling Master would be okay. I go with the Warriors. I go with the Might Trinket, the Mother Box, on for Blackguard, and then, of course, Subjugator. You can use, if you're new and you don't have these, just put in at least tier 2 or tier 3 pet. Mother Box is pretty, OP when it comes to consistent damage. But, right there. So after I took out Berserk, I opted to stay with Eye of Gemini. You don't need Eye of Gemini. Eye of Gemini has its perks, but if you're using Berserk, if you're going to use Berserk, I would recommend against using Eye of Gemini and opt in for Heart of Isis instead. So I would tell you, I would make a recommendation for the Heart of Isis because you're going to use Word of Power in the setup, and Heart of Isis is just going to give you more bang for your buck, with that. So I would suggest that. Right now I'm running a double crit setup because I'm using the eye. If I wasn't using the eye though, I would use Heart of Isis, Candle of Neuron, and then I would probably either use Purified Pages of the Black or Ebon right here in this slot. Solar Amplifier, I opt instead of Omega. If you feel like you need Omega, this would be the slot to put it. I just like Solar Amplifier better. Just to be, just to put it out there. And of course, scrap the Soul Cloak because, they're going to get more supercharge generation out of it. So, yep, that's kind of the setup I'm using. As far as the ability loadout, this is a ranged. So I'm using Hand Blasters, as you saw. I'm using the Plasma Rack. It gives me damage over time. My spammable is going to be the bombardment. So I just go ahead, activate, and then tap 4 times ranged. And that keeps me in between my normal rotation. We're going to use Bloodlust for a weapon buff to activate Starfire. Like Amplified Heat Vision. If you weren't using Solar Amplifier, then you would put the Omega here. Our finisher right here, the chain, Word of Power. I'm using the Scarecrow's Fear Bomb for the Exobyte Steel. I'll get into replacements. I'm using the Soul Signature. That does come with the Neuron. We're getting Spore Pod, Magma Vortex, Exobyte Steel, and of course Exobyte Robo Sidekick. Now, let's say you don't have iconics. Okay, you like, oh my god, I don't, but I'm new, I don't have iconics. It's fine. It's fine. You're fine. Let's just say you don't have accessibility, any of that. This is one of the biggest ones you're really going to use is the Galling Eruption. Galling Eruption, if you're especially within that proximity, it really comes in handy, right? It really does. So I would even put it like here, just, put it in the middle. Then you could actually still use your supercharged generator, right? So you can just literally jump in. You can start off range, jump in, hit the Galling Eruption, and then you want to use an AoE shield. That one's right here. Violence. So violence has when they're around you, they're going to be dealt damage. So as you're fighting in close proximity, they're taking the damage from that. So it's really really good. Now here's the question: are you going to still use bombardment? Usually, I would say no. I would say you're probably either going to use frenzy, because frenzy just deals a ton of damage um in that proximity. So you're just gonna like, oh boy. And then between the cooldown, I would recommend it's right here. It's usually like, oh my god, it's right up top of my head. The chain effect. Oh, right here. Outrage. So I'd put something like outrage right here, and then you can probably even throw another iconic right up here, or movement ability. Like if you're super speed, for example, you can throw your other dot here. So if, say, for example, your super speed, you can use vortex trap. So I would opt to probably put vortex trap even in this setup without any iconics. All right. So that's kind of the setup I kind of used prior before. Biggest thing about it is just keeping your dots up between. And once you can do that, you can really maximize your DPS. The thing is, you do want to build up into your health setup a little more. If you're going to make that arrangement. And then on top of it, this is my lobby. So I still don't even have 100 points into my might and power. But I would up 275 is your main goal to get into. You can go to 100. It's fine. 100 is your first goal, your first benchmark. 200, then I would say 275 is the max that you really want to focus in. Put health and healing next for your DPS, because since you're using lacerate and you're using those, you're going to self-heal. That'll give you a little bit more survivability up in the pocket, and when you maximize health, you're not as squishy either. So, and then if you, let's say you were able to get these both up to 270, all three of these 275, then reallocate approximate, as you're gaining. So there you guys have it. The rage setup and exobyte, coverage. I hope it helps. All right. Once again, I'm your host, Mystic Raven, and have a nice day.